In the silence of a cold, underground garage, a powerful CEO walked alone, disguised as just another tired worker. But what she discovered in the far corner, under a flickering flashlight, would change everything. A young security guard fighting for his future, armed only with determination and an old book. What followed was a story of struggle, sacrifice, and a choice that would transform two lives forever. If you are new to the channel, then please subscribe to the channel and like the video, and tell us in the comments where you are watching from. Now, let's jump into the story. The underground parking garage was quiet, almost too quiet. The air carried a faint chill that slipped through the concrete pillars and echoed softly against the steel beams. It was late, well past the time when most workers had gone home. Only the dim fluorescent lights hummed above, casting long shadows across the gray floor. Maria Ellis walked slowly, her shoes tapping gently against the cement. She had traded her usual polished heels for plain flats. Her blouse, once crisp in the morning, was now loose and wrinkled, her trench coat falling open as she moved. Her blonde hair, usually styled with care, was tucked casually behind her ears. To anyone passing by, she looked like an ordinary employee heading home after a long day. But Maria was far from ordinary. She was the CEO of Ellis Global, one of the largest firms in the city. Tonight, however, she did not carry the weight of her title. She had come without her usual entourage, without her executive car waiting at the entrance. She wanted to see the truth of this struggling branch, to walk its halls without people adjusting their words out of fear of who she was. She wanted to feel the place as it really was. As she reached the far end of the garage, something caught her eye. A faint flicker danced across a concrete wall, soft and irregular, unlike the steady glow of overhead bulbs. She paused, tilting her head slightly. The light was weak, but it pulsed steadily from the corner near the security booth. Curiosity pulled her closer. The sound of her steps echoed as she moved toward the glow. When she turned the corner, she saw the source. It was a flashlight, old and unsteady, balanced awkwardly against a thermos. Its thin beam lit a battered table where a young man sat, hunched over a thick book. The man, no older than his late 20s, wore a navy security jacket unzipped over a plain hoodie. His hair was dark and neatly kept, his face calm, but his brow tightened in concentration as his pen moved quickly across a worn notebook. He was so focused that he did not notice Maria at first. She stopped a few steps away, folding her arms loosely. She watched as he flipped a page, scribbled a note, and leaned closer to the dim light. In that moment, the silence of the garage felt almost sacred. "You always work under that light?" Maria asked gently. The young man startled, his hand moving quickly toward the flashlight. He blinked, adjusting to her sudden presence, then stood up straighter. "Sorry, ma'am, I didn't hear you. Yes, I was just studying." Maria glanced toward the book. The bold letters on the cover read, "Advanced Programming Concepts." "That looks like more than just casual studying," she said with a faint smile. The man gave a small nod. "It's a certification course. I had to leave school a while back, but I'm trying to catch up." His voice was steady, almost factual, without self-pity. Maria introduced herself simply, offering only her first name. "I'm Maria." He hesitated, then replied, "Jordan. Jordan Reed." She noticed the flashlight flickering again, the weak beam barely holding. "That light's barely hanging on," she remarked softly. Jordan smiled faintly. "I make it work." For a moment, Maria felt a sharp tug of memory. Her father used to do the same. Long after finishing shifts at the factory, he would sit at the kitchen table, studying worn textbooks with a single lamp lighting the pages. She remembered sneaking downstairs as a child, watching him fight sleep just to keep learning. Her voice lowered, almost thoughtful. "What drives you to keep at it?" Jordan shrugged lightly. "My younger brother. He's starting college soon. I promised him I'd go back too, show him that it's never too late." Maria nodded slowly, her throat tightening. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out a protein bar, setting it gently on the edge of his table. Then, after a brief pause, she placed a small paperback book beside it. Jordan glanced at the items, startled. "You don't have to." "I know," Maria interrupted softly, "but I want to." He looked at her then, really looked. His gaze was steady, but there was a quiet question behind it, as though he was unused to such kindness. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Maria offered a small smile before stepping back toward her car. As she reached the door, she called out gently over her shoulder. "Not everyone sees value where it is right now, but that doesn't mean it isn't there." She slipped inside the car and drove off, leaving behind the faint hum of the fluorescent lights and a young man standing quietly beside a battered table, staring at a flashlight that had just illuminated more than the pages of his book. The next evening, Maria Ellis found herself walking once again through the quiet garage. She told herself it was coincidence, that her meetings had simply run late, but in truth, something inside her was drawn back to that corner where the dim light had glowed. Jordan Reed was there, just as before, sitting behind his small desk. The flashlight balanced against the thermos still cast its narrow beam, though now it flickered even weaker than before. Maria paused a moment, watching him, then approached with calm steps. He noticed her this time and stood quickly, as if embarrassed to be caught studying again. "You're back," he said, almost cautiously. Maria smiled lightly. "Looks like you're back too. Same corner, same book." Jordan gave a small laugh, though it sounded tired. "Night shifts don't give many options. The book helps me stay awake." She pulled a chair closer, sitting across from him without asking. "And your brother?" she asked gently. For a moment, his expression softened. "Eli, he's 17, the first in our family to earn a scholarship. He'll be starting college in the fall. I promised him I'd keep pushing too. Didn't want him to think I'd given up." Maria nodded, studying him quietly. There was no bitterness in his words, only a steady determination. She reached into her bag and pulled out a paperback. "Thought you might like this. It's about practical coding techniques, easier to understand than those thick manuals." Jordan looked at the book as though it were something rare. His hand hovered before finally taking it. "Thank you, really, but you didn't need to do that." "Maybe not," Maria replied, "but sometimes the right book at the right time can change everything." He didn't answer, but his eyes said enough. Over the days that followed, Maria found herself parking in the same spot near his booth more often. At first, their exchanges were brief, just a greeting, a comment about the weather, a quick question about his studies. But soon, those moments stretched into longer talks. They discussed programming logic, the challenges of balancing work and dreams, even the best instant coffee to survive long shifts. Jordan spoke sparingly, but when he did, his words carried thoughtfulness beyond his years. Maria noticed the details around him: a notebook filled with careful notes, a stack of borrowed library books, and taped inside one of the covers, a small photo of Eli wearing a graduation gown, smiling proudly with a certificate in his hands. "Your brother?" she asked one evening, pointing to the photo. Jordan's face lit up in quiet pride. "Yes, that's Eli. He worked hard for that scholarship. I want him to see that hard work doesn't stop after high school." Maria smiled. "He looks proud." "He is," Jordan replied softly. "But I want him to stay proud. I don't want him to look at me years from now and think I just stood still." His words settled deeply in her. Maria remembered her own father again, his long hours, his constant effort to learn, his silent hope for something better. As the nights passed, she began to notice something else. Jordan was not only determined for himself, he had a quiet habit of helping others. Once, she saw him guide a confused delivery driver through the maze of parking levels. Another time, he offered his last pen to a late shift employee who needed to sign papers. He never asked for thanks. He just helped, then went back to his book. Each small act built a picture of someone who lived with quiet integrity. Maria found herself drawn not only to his determination, but also to his kindness. Still, she kept her identity hidden. To Jordan, she was simply Maria, a tired employee who lingered after hours. She knew that revealing her role as CEO would change everything. People looked at titles, not the person behind them, and she didn't want that wall between them. Not yet. One rainy night, as thunder rolled faintly outside, Maria hurried toward her car. Cold drops blew in through the open entryway, soaking her shoulders. Before she could pull her coat tighter, Jordan stepped out from his booth. Without a word, he draped his security jacket across her shoulders. It was heavy, faintly warm, smelling of coffee and soap. "You'll catch something," he said simply. She looked at him, surprised by the gesture. "You need this more than I do," she whispered. "I'm used to the rain," he replied. "You're not." She clutched the jacket, unsure how to respond. The kindness was simple. Yet it weighed more than any corporate favor she had signed in her career. Later that night, sitting in her car with the jacket still wrapped around her, Maria realized these small sparks, his study, his persistence, his acts of care, were no longer just moments. They were shaping something larger, something she could not ignore. The hidden light she had seen that first night was no longer just a flickering flashlight. It was Jordan himself, shining quietly against the odds. For weeks, the quiet connection between Maria and Jordan grew. Each night carried new conversations, quiet laughter, and the kind of honesty neither had expected to find in the stillness of a parking garage. But like all fragile things, it did not take much for shadows to creep in. One morning, a single photo appeared on the company's internal chat board. It was grainy, taken from a distance, but the image was clear enough. Maria and Jordan were walking side by side in the garage. She was smiling, and he, still in uniform, was holding the door of her car open. The caption beneath it read, "Security guard aiming high." Within hours, the comments followed. Some joked, others accused, and many twisted the story into something it was not. Words like favoritism and promotion were whispered in offices, spreading like wildfire. The photo became proof for those eager to gossip, fuel for those who believed success only came with hidden deals. Jordan saw the post later that evening. A coworker passed him a phone, eyebrows raised. The comments cut sharper with each scroll. It was not only jokes, it was harsh, cynical remarks. Some mocked his studies, others claimed he was using Maria. The silence around him grew heavier. At first he told himself not to care. He had nothing to be ashamed of. But as the night dragged on, the silence began to feel unbearable. When Maria visited briefly that night, she seemed distant. She asked how his studies were going, offered a polite smile, then left quickly. She never mentioned the photo. She never mentioned the gossip. Jordan sat long after she was gone, his jaw tight. He pulled out his phone, typed a message he would never send. "I know it's not true, but your silence makes me wonder if you believe it." He stared at the words, then deleted them. Instead, he opened a blank page and wrote, "Am I just a project, or do I really matter?" He closed the phone, his chest heavy with doubt. The next morning, his resignation letter was sent. No meeting, no explanation, just a polite email titled, "Notice of Departure." When the HR department forwarded the email to Maria's office, she read it 3 times. The words blurred, but the meaning was clear. Jordan was leaving. Maria's hands trembled slightly as she set the paper down. She had been preparing something for weeks, a presentation to launch a new initiative, a chance to prove that hidden talent mattered more than titles. Jordan's name had been at the center of it. He was meant to be introduced as the first systems engineer of her new division, proof that determination and skill could be stronger than debris or connections. But now, the timing was shattered. If she announced his role, the world would believe the rumors. It would look like favoritism, not merit. Her silence, which she thought was protection, had cost her his trust. That evening, she walked through the garage alone. His booth stood empty, the chair pushed neatly under the desk, the lamp turned off. She opened a drawer and found the book she had once given him. Inside it was a sticky note, written in his careful handwriting. Sometimes silence is louder than any answer. Her throat tightened. She had wanted to shield him from whispers, but instead, she had left him to face them alone. And in doing so, she had lost him. Days passed before she gathered the courage to search. She remembered a detail from one of their talks, a small apartment near the Bronx where he lived with his younger brother. One cold night, she drove there, her breath visible as she climbed the stairs. Eli answered the door. He looked thinner, his sweater loose, but his sharp eyes widened in recognition. "Is he here?" Maria asked quietly. Eli shook his head. "He's not staying here right now." After a pause, he added, "He transferred to a different post. He's working nights at the Brooklyn shipping docks. He said no one knows him there. No whispers, no pity looks. Just long hours and heavy boots." Maria closed her eyes, her chest aching. "He shouldn't have had to disappear," she whispered. Eli studied her carefully, his voice calm. "He hates being seen as a charity case. When the rumors spread and you said nothing, he thought you believed them too." Maria's voice broke slightly. "I admired him. I never pitied him." "Maybe he knows that deep down," Eli replied, "but silence can make a person doubt what is true." Maria stood in the cold night air after leaving, her thoughts heavy. She knew then that silence had been her mistake. She had thought she was protecting him, but what he had needed most was her voice. As she drove toward the shipping docks, fog rolled low along the streets. She did not know what she would say when she found him, but she knew she had to try. Because somewhere between the quiet of the garage and the noise of the rumors, she had realized something. This was no longer about business. This was about belief, trust, and the chance to repair what doubt had broken. The Brooklyn docks stretched wide under the misty night sky. Containers lined the yard like silent towers, their metal frames catching the faint glow of overhead lamps. Maria Ellis walked slowly along the gravel path, her breath rising in the cold air. She had been told that Jordan worked here now, walking the lines through the darkest hours of the night. She spotted him near the far end of the yard. A small lantern flickered beside him as he sat on a folding chair, a thick programming book balanced on his lap. The scene struck her, the same determined figure she had first seen weeks ago, still studying under weak light. But something about him was different. His shoulders were tense, his posture guarded, as though invisible walls had grown around him. Maria took a steady breath. "I hoped you'd still be using that light," she said gently. Jordan's head lifted. His expression froze as their eyes met across the dim yard. For a moment, silence pressed heavier than the fog. She stepped closer, holding out a folder wrapped in plastic to protect it from the damp air. "I brought something," she said. "An official contract. Junior systems engineer. It's yours. You earned it long before I even knew your name." He looked at the folder, but did not reach for it. His voice was quiet, edged with doubt. "Why now?" Maria swallowed hard. "Because I was wrong. I thought staying silent would protect you. I thought waiting would prove to the world that you earned this on your own. But I forgot something important. Respect doesn't begin with the world. It begins with honesty. And I failed you there." Jordan leaned back in his chair, his gaze steady but unreadable. "When the rumors started, I felt like I was being tested. I thought you wanted to see if I could handle it, and when you said nothing, it felt like you believed them." Maria's voice softened. I froze. I've been betrayed before, used before, and I thought keeping quiet would shield us both. But I see now that silence was not protection, it was abandonment. I never wanted you to feel invisible. I believed in you from the start. His eyes shifted to the flashlight on the crate beside him. The same small beam that had lit countless nights. "No one has ever believed in me the way you did," he said finally. But when the silence came, I thought I'd imagined it. She stepped closer, her voice low but certain. "I still believe in you. Not as a project, not as a story, but as the person you are. Determined, capable, honest. Everything I saw in you from the very first night." The weight of her words hung in the mist. Slowly, Jordan closed the book on his lap and stood. He reached out, not for the contract at first, but for her hand. His grip was steady, warm. "I want this job," he said, "but more than that, I want it to mean something real. No more pretending, no more shadows." Maria nodded, her throat tight. No more shadows. That night, under the low hum of the docks, they chose to begin again. Not with silence, but with honesty. A year later, the city skyline shone under the pale winter sun. On a busy corner, a new glass building stood proudly with silver letters above its doors. Bright Path Center. Inside, the air buzzed with life. Students filled classrooms with the sound of keyboards, laughter, and the excitement of learning. In the main hall, a display of photos showed smiling faces, graduates holding certificates, and groups working on projects. Near the center of it all stood Jordan Reed, wearing a navy blazer over a white shirt. His badge read Lead Systems Engineer. Trainees gathered around him, asking questions, and he answered each one with patience and encouragement. Just a year earlier, he had been the guard with a worn notebook and a flickering flashlight. Now, he was guiding others toward a future he once thought unreachable. Eli, his younger brother, walked between classrooms, now a college student and part-time mentor at the center. His confidence grew with each step, his future shaped by the example Jordan had set. Maria watched from across the room, her heart steady with quiet pride. Their connection had never been about titles or appearances. It had been about belief, about seeing value where others overlooked it. When the opening ceremony began, Maria introduced Jordan to the CRO. "This center was built to remind us that potential does not vanish just because it is hidden," she said. "And no one understands that better than the man I am about to introduce." Applause rose as Jordan stepped to the podium. He looked out at the audience, students, mentors, donors, and his brother standing proudly in the front row. His voice was calm but firm. "I used to believe I was just the person who locked doors at night, but then someone believed in me, and it helped me believe in myself. Now I want to pass that belief on to every person who walks through these doors." The crowd erupted in applause, but Jordan's eyes found Maria's across the hall. She smiled, and in that look was every word they had not needed to say. Later, when the guests began to tour the classrooms, Jordan walked to a wall of keepsakes near the entrance. He pulled something from his bag, the old flashlight. He pinned it carefully to the display, its scratched surface gleaming under the lights. "This," he said quietly to a nearby student, "is where it started. A small light in the dark, a reminder that no matter how dim the glow, it can guide you to something greater." The student nodded, wide-eyed. Maria stepped beside him, her voice soft. "And now, that light will guide many." They stood together, watching the students move through the center, filled with hope and determination. The flashlight, once a symbol of struggle, had become a symbol of possibility. And so, a quiet night in a garage became the beginning of something far larger, a journey that proved the smallest light can grow into a beacon strong enough to lead countless others forward. And that is how a flickering light in the dark became a beacon of hope for many. Remember, even the smallest spark can ignite a future. If this story inspired you, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share it with someone who needs a reminder that second chances can change everything.